Hello friends, I came across a very interesting article. More precisely, this is a decision by the Executive Committee of the Poltava City Council, and now we will break it down. In general, what do I see happening right now? Now they want to encourage not only police officers but also TCC workers who are currently doing this to catch men in Ukraine. And I see there's a trend that they want everyone who has deferments and exemptions to be encouraged to catch those who don't have deferments and exemptions. That is, even if it's a civil servant who got their exemption simply because they work at a government job. And in order not to go to the front himself, he needs to catch someone who doesn't have this deferment and send them to the front. And that's why now even just getting some basic certificate or something else at this SNAP center can end up with you being detained right there and taken to the military enlistment office. What happens next? Today, we all understand this very well, and it's clear from the daily news. We'll analyze this decision now. In my opinion, this is really interesting and crazy when you think about it, so let's go through it step by step. Please support this video with likes, comments, and subscriptions. Thank you to each of you. On January 9, the Executive Committee of the Poltava City Council supported the decision on the state of military registration and the tasks for its improvement for the year 2026. The document is based on the report of the Poltava United City TCC and SP. So, this Executive Committee of the Poltava City Council gathered, who sits on the Executive Committee of the Poltava City Council. That's right, those whom the front doesn't affect and never will, these are the exempted ones, their children, grandchildren, friends, acquaintances. All of them also have some kind of deferment or exemption. Because this can be arranged, since they have access to power and money, and everyone else, those they don't know, who don't have access to money or power. In fact, they've already been labeled as draft dodgers, and they need to be caught, so a sort of committee gets together with the military enlistment officers and decides how best to catch men to go and defend. Them actually at the front. The enlistment office says city military registration follows regulations. However, a major issue is that some companies can't be checked because they don't exist at their official addresses and their real locations are unknown. Additionally, many enterprises ignore the yearly requirement to update employee lists with the military office. And it seems to me that it's quite clear why some companies couldn't care less about doing this reconciliation. Because, for example, they have 30 employees. They realize that reconciling now risks losing these 30 employees since someone might take them. The military enlistment officers will catch everyone, and the business can just be locked up and the key thrown into the river, because there will be no one left to work there. In my view, it's understandable to support the business, especially with many well-fed enlistment officers who don't always act legally. That's exactly what we do with you every day. We see it. What will be different in 2026? Personally, I wouldn't say these changes surprised me because I'm no longer shocked by any of these decisions. They're not news to me. But I didn't think it was possible to be this cynical, and that you could be so, to be so inhumane. You know, inside yourself. Employers and government agencies have the same main tasks as last year. Register those under the age limit, send employees to territorial recruitment centers, and review military registration specialties among women. The section on law enforcement interactions has been significantly clarified. The most interesting part is the stricter and more specific proposal regarding the search and apprehension of men. Last year, the police was simply asked to develop an effective system for finding violators, but now the proposal is much clearer. Friends, take a seat so you don't fall and set aside your drinks or food. Things are about to get intense. First, it's about detention. The police are not just supposed to search, but to ensure administrative detention and deliver the so-called evaders directly to the territorial recruitment center. Here's what they're saying, what they're referring to. They're just referring to what they want. And this, by the way, is yet another confirmation that most of our civil servants just sit around in their protected positions and send other people to the front. Because this is the decision of our officials, who were supposed to know the laws as well as possible. And with this decision, they just confirmed their own responsibility. Professional incompetence. Yes, because that's exactly what it is. We are informed about this by the point of creation of Post Beginino, and this is an article of the Code of Ukraine on administrative offenses. That's right, and here they are talking about administrative ones. Invaki, Invidi. FBK. Wiki. In cases where, firstly, it is necessary to stop an administrative offense or to identify a person, or to ensure the consideration of the case, or to ensure the execution of the decision, the maximum period is up to 3 hours, which is the general rule for detention, and up to 72 hours if it is a broader case. But it does not apply to mobilization violations. That's the first thing, meaning you either need to stop the administrative offense, or identify the person, or ensure the consideration of the case, or ensure the execution of the decision. So they do not have the right to bring anyone to the Territorial Recruitment Center? Yes, they do not, because what is considered evasion, as it is said, is not considered evasion. Outdated data by itself. The absence of a reserve plus, refusal to go to the Territorial Recruitment Center without being served, or not having a military identification with you, these cannot be grounds for administrative detention. There are only 2 scenarios in which administrative detention can occur, and even then, the delivery must be either to the courtroom or for identification purposes. For example, delivery to the police station is possible, but by no means to the Territorial Recruitment Center. So, the first scenario is when an administrative offense has already been recorded. For example, a person has been served a summons and did not appear as required without a valid reason. A protocol has already been drawn up under Article 210 or 210-1 of the Ukrainian Code of Administrative Offenses. Police can detain someone for up to 3 hours, confirm their identity, and create a protocol. But this is not delivery to the Territorial Recruitment Center. If the person has shown their documents, this can be done right there on the spot, or in the worst case, they can be taken to the police station, but in no way to the Territorial Recruitment Center building. The second scenario, which is more lawful, is when there is a court order, when the court has made a decision about detention, and if the order already includes compulsory enforcement. We understand that the court will not issue such a decision for everyone just for not updating their military registration data, because that would be too many documents. First, it must be done for everyone who hasn't updated their military registration data. The court would have to process this case. And if the courts were dealing with this, they simply wouldn't be able to keep up with the workload. Yes, with everything that needs to be done. That's why this doesn't exist. So, there is no option for this Poltava regiment, this so-called Sharashkina office, to just deliver someone to the Territorial Recruitment Center without grounds. There is no legality to it. All of it is an abuse of official authority. So in fact, this executive committee is calling on the police to exceed their official powers. Secondly, they came up with criminal cases themselves. Law enforcement officers were assigned to conduct pre-trial investigations under Criminal Code Articles 335, 36, and 37. These involve evading conscription, mobilization, and military registration. I want to remind you that those who haven't completed the Military Medical Commission or updated their military registration have committed administrative, not criminal offenses. It's like pigs reaching for the sky. So this also doesn't concern the vast majority. But if a person has already passed the Military Medical Commission and has already been served a summons and then does not show up according to this summons for deployment, then yes, in that case we can talk about the article on evasion of mobilization. But this does not apply to those who have not updated their military registration data. And the most interesting thing is, why will SNAPEV be taken directly to the TCC buildings? The mechanism for catching draft dodgers in state institutions has changed. The TCC, as before, sends lists of those who evade service, that is, those who have not updated their military registration data, to state authorities and local self-government bodies. When such a person comes to an institution to resolve personal matters, for example, to get a certificate, officials could call the police. That's how it used to be. What is supposed to happen now? Last year, it was only about the fact of the call itself. They could call, or they might not call the police. But now, the ultimate goal is clearly stated. to organize everything so that the police come, detain this person, and take them to the Territorial Recruitment Center. Just imagine, now reserved civil servants have to organize everything like this at the Administrative Services Center, stall for time, somehow call the police without scaring the person and everything else. And do everything to wait for the police, so that the police actually detain the person who hasn't updated their military registration data and unlawfully take them to the Territorial Recruitment Center. First, second, or third, it's all official authority abuse. And we see that this committee, the Executive Committee of the Poltava City Council, is actually encouraging the commission of criminal offenses, specifically criminal offenses, for which, as it seems to me, there should be an investigation by the State Bureau of Investigation. Something needs to be done about this. Because I understand that the Constitution has long been disregarded, I understand that such a phrase as the rule of law is unattainable for the eyes of our officials. But again, if the situation continues to develop this way, if the lack of rule of law is ignored and these problems just keep going on by themselves, then well, it's simply impossible to win this war in such a case. It's impossible to win a war when there is no trust within society towards the executive bodies. And just imagine, people are now reading this decision of the Executive Committee of the Poltava City Council and realizing that's it. If I come to the Administrative Services Center, I'll be met by a reserved civil servant who's just sitting there, doing nothing, only interested in making sure he himself doesn't get unreserved and sent to the front instead of me. That's why it's called the Hunger Games. Very interesting choices. And what do you think about this? Write in the comments. It will be very interesting to hear and read your opinion. I wish you all a great day, friends, and see you next time.